My name is Anita Reynolds, 35 years old, and until recently a marketing executive at Meridian Technologies for 7 long years. Despite my dedication and results office, politics left me feeling invisible. When my transfer was announced, my colleagues threw a goodbye forever party that revealed their true feelings. Good riddance to dead weight, they laughed, glasses clinking. If only they knew where I was really going. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever been underestimated at work. I joined Meridian Technologies fresh out of graduate school with my MBA. The company was growing rapidly in the tech sector, and I was thrilled to land a position at their Atlanta regional office. With my marketing background and passion for technology, it seemed like the perfect fit. I remember walking through those glass doors on my first day, portfolio in hand, ready to change the world. Little did I know what I was walking into. The Atlanta office had a reputation within the company for being results-driven, but what I discovered was something far more toxic. Competition wasn't just encouraged, it was the oxygen everyone breathed. Collaboration was viewed as weakness. Information was currency hoarded and traded like valuable stock. Rachel Baker was the first person to welcome me. Tall, impeccably dressed, with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She ran the office gossip network with frightening efficiency. "Let me show you around." She offered that first day proceeding to give me a tour, peppered with comments about who was on thin ice, who was sleeping with whom, and which managers to avoid. I mistook this for friendliness initially, not recognizing she was categorizing me as well. Marcus Wilson headed our department. He had this practiced casual lean against door frames when checking on projects, which inevitably led to him absorbing credit for any successful ideas. His signature move was saying, "What we did here was," in client presentations after having contributed nothing but criticism. He was a master of managing upward, making sure regional executives saw him as indispensable while treating his team as interchangeable parts. Heather Phillips presented herself as the friendly face of the office. She brought homemade cookies to meetings and organized birthday celebrations. "We're like family here," she would say right before repeating your confidential concerns to management. Her betrayals were always couched in concern. "I just thought Marcus should know you were worried about the timeline. I'm looking out for you." Then there was James Tanner, the one genuine person in a sea of artifice. Quiet and competent, he kept his head down and did excellent work. We formed an alliance of sorts, warning each other about office politics and occasionally meeting for coffee to decompress. "This place would fall apart without you," he told me once after I salvaged a client relationship Marcus had damaged. From the beginning, I put everything into my job. I developed comprehensive marketing strategies that increased our regional client acquisition by 30% in my second year. I stayed late perfecting presentations, refining campaign language, and analyzing metrics to improve our approaches. I volunteered for difficult accounts no one wanted and turned them into success stories. One particular project stands out. Our team was tasked with creating a campaign for Nexus Solutions, a client everyone considered too demanding and not worth the effort. I spent weekends researching their industry, understanding their customers, and developing a targeted approach that spoke directly to their needs. When I presented it to Marcus, he skimmed the materials and said, "It needs work. Revise and have it back to me tomorrow." The next day, I found him presenting my strategy to the client slide by slide with only the header changed to include his name. The microaggressions were constant and wearing. Being interrupted in meetings became so common that I started timing how long I could speak before someone, usually Rachel or Marcus, would talk over me. The record was 28 seconds. When I submitted ideas via email to create a paper trail, they would be dismissed only to resurface weeks later as someone else's brilliant insight. Team lunches would be planned within my earshot, but no invitation extended. "Oh, we thought you were busy," was the standard excuse when I mentioned it. Small groups would fall silent when I approached the break room conversation, resuming only after I left. After the third time Marcus took credit for my work, I began documenting everything. I kept detailed records of all my projects, ideas, and contributions. I saved emails, recorded meetings when appropriate, and built a portfolio that clearly demonstrated my value to the company. I made sure to copy corporate leadership on important achievements, not in an obvious way, but ensuring my name stayed in their peripheral vision. I also maintained relationships with clients, directly making myself the point person they would call first. Just reach out to me anytime, I would tell them, providing value that made me difficult to replace. The clients appreciated having someone reliable who understood their needs, and many requested me specifically for their accounts. Unknown to my regional colleagues, executives at corporate headquarters in Chicago had begun to notice these efforts. Barbara Stevens, the chief marketing officer, emailed me directly about one of my campaign strategies. Your approach to the Henderson account showed the kind of innovative thinking we need more of at Meridian, she wrote. I saved that email like a talisman, reading it on particularly difficult days. Despite the environment, I loved the work itself. Marketing technology products required both creativity and analytical thinking, and I found satisfaction in developing strategies that genuinely helped clients connect with their customers. Each small success kept me going, even as the office culture chipped away at my confidence. By my 6th year, I had built a reputation with clients and corporate leadership that existed entirely separate from how I was perceived in the Atlanta office. I had a substantial portfolio of successful campaigns metrics showing my direct impact on regional revenue and a network of satisfied clients who requested me by name. All of this happened while my immediate colleagues continued to undermine, ignore, or dismiss my contributions. I wondered sometimes if I should leave, find a company that would value me properly from the start. But something kept me there, a stubborn determination not to let them win, not to let the toxic culture drive out someone who was actually contributing value. And deep down, I hoped that eventually merit would matter more than politics. What I didn't realize was that someone was watching someone who would change everything. And when the opportunity finally came, it would reveal far more about my colleagues than I ever expected to learn. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning in early spring. Subject line: Meeting request. Barbara Stevens and Richard Montgomery. Richard was the CEO of Meridian Technologies. My heart jumped into my throat. What could the CEO and Chief Marketing Officer possibly want with me? The message was brief. Anita, please join us for a video conference today at 1100 a.m. Calendar invite attached. This is confidential. I checked the time, 9:37 a.m. Less than an hour and a half to prepare for whatever this was. My mind raced through possibilities, none of them particularly reassuring. Had something gone wrong with one of my accounts? Was there a complaint I didn't know about? I spent the next hour reviewing recent projects, checking for any potential issues. Everything seemed in order. At 10:55, with my heart pounding, I logged into the conference room I had booked and connected to the video call. Barbara's familiar face appeared first, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in her trademark bun. Then Richard joined, his expression unreadable. I had only met him once at a company-wide conference 2 years earlier. Anita, thank you for joining us on short notice. Barbara began, her voice warm. We've been watching your work for some time now. Richard nodded. Very impressive trajectory. Your client retention rates are the highest in the company. Did you know that? I hadn't known that. In our regional office, such metrics were closely guarded by management. We've been discussing the future of Meridian, Barbara continued, and specifically how we want to address some of the cultural challenges we've identified in certain regional offices. My stomach tightened. Were they going to ask me to report on my colleagues? I wasn't comfortable being put in that position regardless of how I'd been treated. Richard leaned forward. Let me be direct, Anita. We're restructuring the leadership at Meridian, and we want you to join the executive team as Vice President of Regional Marketing Operations. I stared at them, certain I had misheard. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Barbara smiled. We want you in Chicago, Anita. As VP, you would oversee all regional marketing departments, including Atlanta. Your record speaks for itself, and frankly, we need your approach to client relationships and campaign development implemented company-wide. They proceeded to outline a vision where I would help transform Meridian's approach to marketing, standardize best practices across regions, and address the competitive culture that was undermining collaboration. The salary they mentioned was nearly triple what I currently made. We need someone who understands the challenges from the inside, Richard explained. Someone who has succeeded despite those challenges, not by playing the politics but by focusing on actual results. I found my voice finally. I'm honored, truly. This is unexpected. We understand this is a significant change, Barbara said. You'd need to relocate to Chicago, and you'd be taking on substantial new responsibilities. When would this happen? I asked, mind still reeling. We'd like you to transition in 1 month, Richard replied. Which brings us to an important point. We need this to remain confidential until we make the official announcement. We're making several leadership changes simultaneously, and the timing needs to be coordinated. For now, Barbara added, we'll simply announce internally that you're being transferred to the Chicago office. The promotion and your new role will be announced company-wide in 4 weeks after you've had time to relocate, and we've finalized the other organizational changes. I nodded, trying to process everything. So my team will just know I'm transferring, not that I'm becoming their boss. Exactly, Richard confirmed. We've found that this approach creates a cleaner transition. People adjust to one change at a time. After discussing more details and answering my questions, they ended the call with Barbara promising to send comprehensive information about the relocation package and transition plan. I sat alone in the conference room, stunned. Vice President, overseeing all regional marketing, including my current team, the team that had marginalized me for years. My emotions swirled between vindication, excitement, anxiety, and a strange sort of grief. I would be leaving Atlanta, where I had built a life outside of work. I would be taking on enormous new responsibilities, and I would eventually return to oversee the very people who had undermined me at every turn. That afternoon, Marcus called me into his office. His expression was neutral as he gestured for me to sit down. I received a notification from HR about your transfer to the Chicago office, he said, watching me carefully. Effective in 4 weeks. I nodded, maintaining the composed expression I had practiced in the bathroom mirror. Yes, that's right. May I ask what position you'll be taking there? His tone suggested casual interest, but his eyes were calculating. Remembering my instructions, I kept it vague. I'll be joining the corporate marketing team. It's a good opportunity to broaden my experience. Marcus leaned back, a small smile playing at his lips. Chicago is quite different from Atlanta. Colder. More expensive. I hope it works out for you. His tone suggested he doubted it would. Thank you for your concern, I replied evenly. I'm looking forward to the change. As I turned to leave, he added, We'll need to redistribute your accounts. I'm thinking Rachel can handle most of them. She's been ready for more responsibility. Of course, Rachel, who had contributed virtually nothing to our major client relationships but was always positioned to benefit. I'll prepare transition documents, I said, not trusting myself to say more. News travels fast in toxic environments. By the end of the day, the entire office knew I was being sent to Chicago. The narrative formed immediately, without anyone bothering to ask me directly. I overheard Rachel at the coffee machine. Corporate probably realized she wasn't pulling her weight here. Chicago is where they put people before letting them go. Remember Thomas from accounting? Heather stopped by my desk with a concerned expression. Chicago in winter is brutal. Do you even own a proper coat? This seems so sudden. Her eyes scanned my workspace, already cataloging what might become available. Throughout the day, I received condolence-like comments from colleagues who assumed this was a demotion or a step toward termination. No one considered it might be an advancement. After all, in their minds, I was the team member who somehow kept hanging on despite not being exceptional in any way. Only James approached with genuine concern. Are you okay with this move? He asked quietly when we were alone in the copy room. It seems out of nowhere. For a moment, I was tempted to tell him the truth. James had been a real ally, but I had promised Barbara and Richard complete confidentiality. It's a good move for me, I said instead. A fresh start. He nodded, looking relieved. I'm glad. You deserve better than how you've been treated here. As the whispers continued throughout the week, I made a decision. I would not correct anyone's assumptions. I would not hint at the real nature of my transfer. I would observe, remember, and learn exactly who people were when they thought I was on my way out. It was an educational experience, to say the least. Projects I had led were suddenly being claimed by others in meetings. I'll be taking over the Nexus account that Anita was assisting with, Rachel announced to the team, despite having never once participated in that client relationship. Marcus began introducing Rachel to my clients without including me. As we prepare for upcoming changes, Rachel will be your new point person, he told them often while I was present. The hardest part was maintaining my professionalism while watching people erase my contributions in real time. I documented everything partially out of habit and partially because I knew this information would be valuable in my new role. At night, I alternated between packing my apartment, preparing for my new position by studying company-wide operations, and wondering how to handle the inevitable moment when my colleagues would learn the truth. Should I confront their behavior directly, pretend it never happened, use my new authority to address the toxic culture immediately? I had no answers yet, but one thing was becoming increasingly clear. This transition was revealing character in ways that would prove invaluable when I returned as their leader. It was exactly 17 days before my scheduled departure when I first heard about the party. I was returning from lunch, walking quietly down the hallway toward my desk, when I heard Rachel's distinctive laugh coming from the small conference room. The door was partially open. "We should call it a goodbye forever party," she was saying. "Because let's be honest, once corporate realizes what little she actually does, she won't last 3 months in Chicago." I froze just outside the door, out of sight, but able to hear clearly. "Is that too harsh?" Heather's voice feigning concern as usual. "What if she comes back to visit?" Rachel snorted. "She won't. Nobody comes back from Chicago. Remember when they transferred Steve from sales? Complete ghost now." "I think it's perfect," Marcus's voice now authoritative and amused. "We can finally express our appreciation for all her contributions." "Or lack thereof," Rachel added, followed by more laughter. I stood there, blood rushing in my ears as they continued planning what was clearly meant to be a humiliating send-off. They discussed roasting my work history, creating a slideshow of Anita's greatest misses, and even making a mock trophy for most likely to be forgotten immediately. When they began assigning tasks, I quietly backed away and took the long route to my desk. My hands were shaking slightly as I sat down and stared at my computer screen. The next morning, I received an email from Rachel with the subject line, "Farewell Celebration for Anita." It was addressed to the entire office. "As we prepare to bid farewell to our colleague Anita, please join us next Friday at 4:00 p.m. in the main conference room to celebrate her time at Meridian Atlanta and send her off to her new adventure in Chicago. Refreshments will be provided. Please respond with what you can bring to the potluck portion. Marcus will give a special presentation, and we'll have time for everyone to share their memories and well wishes." The false enthusiasm was nauseating. The email thread quickly filled with responses, people claiming dishes they would bring, and a few suggestions for the presentation that made it clear many others were in on the joke. Then came the worst blow. I was accidentally included on an email that was clearly meant to exclude me. From Rachel Baker to Marcus Wilson, Heather Phillips, 12 other colleagues. Subject: Anita's real send-off plan. Let's be clear about what this party is actually about. 7 years of carrying dead weight deserves a proper goodbye. Marcus has prepared a hilarious presentation highlighting some of Anita's biggest contributions. Heather is bringing her special margarita mix. I've created a card for everyone to sign. With your real thoughts, keep it just this side of HR violations, people. Remember, in the official party, keep it professional enough that she doesn't suspect, but feel free to include subtle references that we'll all understand. This is our chance to finally say what we've all been thinking for years. I stared at the screen, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. Part of me had known they disliked me, but seeing the active glee they took in planning my humiliation was something else entirely. Over the next few days, I noticed increasing boldness in how people treated me. Tasks were being reassigned without consulting me. My input in meetings was openly dismissed rather than just subtly ignored. Marcus had already placed Rachel at my desk during a client call, introducing her as taking over from Anita while I was still present. In the break room, conversations would pause when I entered, followed by exaggerated pleasantries that barely masked their anticipation of my departure. Just 17 more days of this, I overheard Rachel stage whisper to a colleague, not bothering to hide her smile when she saw me. James cornered me in the parking lot after work one evening, looking troubled. "I need to warn you about something," he said, quietly glancing around to ensure we were alone. "This goodbye party they're planning, it's not what you think." "What do you mean?" I asked, pretending ignorance. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "They're planning to humiliate you." Marcus has put together a presentation that's basically mocking your entire time here. Rachel is encouraging everyone to make backhanded comments disguised as compliments. I nodded slowly. I suspected something like that might be happening. Are you going to skip it, I would? I considered his question carefully. Number? I think I need to be there. Why put yourself through that? His concern was genuine. Because someday this experience will matter, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. And I want to remember exactly who said and did what. James looked confused but nodded slowly. I'll be there too then. For moral support. That night I called Barbara Stevens, my soon-to-be direct supervisor at corporate. After catching up on transition details, I hesitantly brought up the party. They're throwing me a goodbye party that's designed to be humiliating, I explained. I accidentally saw some planning emails. Barbara was silent for a moment. How do you want to handle it? I'm planning to attend, I told her, to observe and maintain professionalism. That's a challenging choice, she said carefully, but potentially valuable. These are people you'll be managing soon. This gives you insight into the culture you'll need to transform. Exactly, I agreed. It's an opportunity to see who can be trusted and who needs closer management. Just remember, Barbara advised, their behavior reflects on them, not on you, and things will change very soon. After our call, I spent time preparing myself emotionally for the event. I knew it would be difficult to sit through mockery and thinly veiled insults while maintaining composure. I practiced neutral expressions in the mirror and prepared a brief professional thank you speech that revealed nothing about my future role. I also decided that when the time came for the truth to be revealed, I would not be vindictive. I would be fair but firm, focused on transforming the culture rather than punishing individuals. This decision helped center me as the dreaded party approached. The day before the event, Marcus asked me to prepare a summary of my time at Meridian to share at the party. His smirk told me this was another opportunity for humiliation, as anything I prepared would likely be mocked or contradicted by his presentation. Of course, I agreed pleasantly, happy to reflect on my 7 years here. That evening, I carefully selected my outfit for the party, a conservative but stylish navy blue dress that I had been saving for my first day at corporate. It was subtle armor, helping me feel more confident than I actually was. As I laid out my clothes, I received a text from James. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember, these people don't determine your value. Their loss is Chicago's gain. His kindness nearly broke the composure I had been carefully constructing. In that moment, I decided that whatever happened with the rest of the team, I would find a way to recognize James's integrity when I returned as VP. The morning of the party arrived, and with it a strange calm. I had moved beyond anxiety to a place of detached observation. These people thought they were sending me off to failure, never to be seen again. The dramatic irony of the situation was almost amusing if it wasn't so personally painful. I spent the day wrapping up transition documents, responding to emails with perfect professionalism, and observing the excited glances and whispers that increased as the afternoon wore on. At 3:30, Rachel and Heather left to set up for the 4:00 party. By 3:55, I was ready to face whatever they had planned. My expression neutral but pleasant, my real emotions locked safely away until I could process them privately. Taking a deep breath, I walked toward the conference room, ready to endure what would undoubtedly be one of the most challenging professional experiences of my career. But I reminded myself in just 2 weeks everything would change. I just had to get through this first. The main conference room had been transformed for the occasion. A banner hung across the back wall reading "Farewell Anita with good luck in Chicago" in significantly smaller letters underneath. The exclamation point seemed sarcastic somehow, especially with the addition of question marks someone had drawn in marker after good luck. Streamers in corporate blue and white draped the tables alongside food and drinks arranged in a surprisingly elaborate spread. A projector was set up at the front of the room, currently displaying a title slide, Anita Reynolds' 7 years of memories. As I entered, conversations hushed momentarily before resuming with exaggerated enthusiasm. Rachel approached immediately, glass of wine already in hand, despite it being just after 4 in the afternoon. "The guest of honor arrives," she announced loudly, giving me an air kiss near my cheek. "We wanted to send you off properly. You deserve everything that's coming to you. Thank you for organizing this, I replied evenly, noting how her smile faltered slightly at my lack of visible discomfort. Marcus stood by the projector, adjusting settings with an anticipatory grin. Heather busied herself directing people to sign a large farewell card propped on an easel. James stood awkwardly by the food table, giving me a subtle nod of support. For the first 15 minutes, the party maintained a veneer of professionalism. People filled plates with food, made small talk, and offered platitudes about Chicago. I hear it's affordable in the really bad neighborhoods, one colleague mentioned with feigned helpfulness. The winters might not be too brutal if global warming keeps up, offered another. Then Marcus clinked his glass, calling for everyone's attention. If you'll all take your seats, I've prepared a special presentation to commemorate Anita's time with us. The room settled, all eyes alternating between me and the screen. I sat in the chair that had been obviously left for me front and center, impossible to hide. Anita Reynolds joined us 7 years ago. Marcus began clicking to a slide showing my company ID photo from my first day. Fresh-faced and ready to conquer the marketing world. The tone was already set slightly mocking. What followed was 45 excruciating minutes of what they considered Anita's greatest misses, carefully framed to seem like good-natured ribbing, while actually highlighting fabricated failures. Remember the Dynatech presentation? Marcus narrated over a slide showing an early presentation of mine. 3 years into her time with us and still recommending outdated strategies. What he conveniently omitted was that after that presentation, Dynatech had increased their contract by 30% based on my recommendations. Rachel chimed in frequently with helpful additions. And then there was the time she suggested we focus on social media for industrial clients. The room erupted in laughter, though that strategy had actually resulted in significant lead generation for those very clients. The most surreal part was watching colleagues, who had barely interacted with me, suddenly become experts on my supposed professional shortcomings. People who couldn't have named my clients a week ago were now telling anecdotes about how I had almost lost accounts that I had actually saved or grown. Halfway through, Heather rose to distribute drinks she called Anita Specials, explaining loudly that they were mostly water like her marketing strategies. More laughter. James declined his drink, one of the few small mercies of the afternoon. As the presentation reached my most recent projects, the comments grew bolder, fueled by alcohol and the apparent safety of numbers. We'll finally have room in the budget for real innovation, Marcus declared, showing a chart with made-up figures suggesting my projects had been costly and ineffective. Good riddance to dead weight, called someone from the back, generating the loudest laugh yet. Chicago won't know what hit them, Rachel added, and neither will Anita when she realizes what real expectations look like. I maintained my neutral expression throughout, though my hands were clasped so tightly under the table that my knuckles had turned white. I focused on breathing evenly, reminding myself that their perception had nothing to do with reality. Finally, Marcus concluded with a slide titled Anita's Legacy, which was conspicuously blank except for a question mark. I think this sums it up perfectly, he said to appreciative chuckles. And now Rachel announced, taking center stage as is tradition, a toast to our departing colleague. She raised her glass eyes, glittering with malice, barely disguised as mirth. To Anita, who somehow survived 7 years through. Well, we're still not quite sure how or why. Laughter rippled through the room. May Chicago be everything you deserve, and may we finally get someone who can pull their weight around here. Finally getting rid of the dead weight. To Anita. To Anita, the room echoed, glasses raising. I noticed James merely lifted his glass without drinking or speaking. Would anyone else like to share some memories of working with Anita? Heather asked, her voice sweet but her eyes cold. What followed was a parade of backhanded compliments and thinly veiled insults. I always admired how you kept trying despite the feedback. Your persistence in the face of limited success was inspiring. You certainly had a unique approach to client relationships. Marcus stepped forward again. Anita, you've been with us through thick and thin. Mostly thin. Especially when it came to results. More laughter. But in all seriousness, we've prepared a small token to remember us by. Heather presented a small box. Inside was a cheap snow globe of the Atlanta skyline. The card attached read, When you're freezing in Chicago, Remember the warm reception you always got here. The irony was almost too perfect. And now Rachel said we'd love to hear a few words from Anita herself. Any parting wisdom for the team you're leaving behind? All eyes turned to me. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Would I break down? Get angry? Make excuses? Their anticipation was palpable. I rose slowly, smoothed my dress, and approached the front of the room. Taking the spot where Marcus and Rachel had stood, I surveyed the faces before me. Some eager, some uncomfortable, most expecting entertainment at my expense. Thank you all for this memorable send-off. I began, my voice steady. 7 years at Meridian Atlanta has certainly been an educational experience. I paused, seeing a few disappointed expressions at my composure. I've learned valuable lessons about marketing, client relationships, and perhaps most importantly, professional dynamics. Every experience, positive or negative, shapes us into who we become. Another pause. A few confused glances exchanged. I'll be taking these lessons with me to Chicago, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to expand my horizons with Meridian in a new capacity. I made brief eye contact with James, the only genuine connection in the room. Change is inevitable in any organization. Sometimes that change is visible immediately, sometimes it reveals itself over time. I look forward to seeing how Meridian Atlanta evolves in the future, and I appreciate this chance to properly say goodbye to all of you. I raised my still untouched glass. To future connections. Thank you. The reaction was muted confusion. My speech had been professional, revealing nothing of my hurt or anger, providing no satisfaction to those hoping to see me crumble. Rachel looked particularly frustrated as scattered, uncertain applause followed my toast. Well, Marcus said, trying to recapture the mood that was professional. Just like Anita, keeping her cards close to her chest. As the party began to disperse, people approached with awkward handshakes and forced well wishes. Heather hugged me stiffly, whispering, "We'll miss you around here," with absolutely no conviction. Rachel made a show of helping clean up while making sure I overheard her telling others. Well, that was anticlimactic. I expected at least a few tears. Marcus shook my hand firmly, his eyes calculating. Best of luck in Chicago, Anita. I hope you find what you're looking for there. I believe I will, I replied simply. James was the last to approach as I gathered my things to leave. You handled that with incredible grace, he said quietly. Thank you for being a bright spot here, I told him sincerely. It meant more than you know. I walked out of the conference room with my head high, but the moment I reached my car in the parking garage, the carefully maintained composure cracked. Tears came suddenly and forcefully, a release of the tension, hurt, and anger I had suppressed throughout the afternoon. For 7 years I had worked alongside these people, contributed to the company's success, maintained professionalism in the face of constant undermining. And their goodbye was mockery and celebration of my departure. I allowed myself exactly 10 minutes of grief in my car. Then I dried my tears, reapplied my makeup, and drove home. Tomorrow would be another day of transition preparations. In 2 weeks, I would walk into Meridian's corporate headquarters as Vice President of Regional Marketing Operations. And eventually, I would return to Atlanta in a very different capacity than anyone at that party could imagine. 2 weeks after the Goodbye Forever party, I stood in the elevator of Meridian Technologies' Chicago headquarters, watching the numbers climb to the executive floor. My navy blue suit was pressed, my portfolio organized, and my nerves surprisingly steady. Today was the day everything would change. Barbara Stevens met me at the elevator doors, her handshake firm and welcoming. Ready for your first day as Vice President, Anita? More than ready, I replied with a confidence that had solidified during my preparation for this role. The executive floor was all glass and polished wood with views of Lake Michigan stretching out beyond the windows. Barbara led me to a spacious corner office with my name already on the door. Anita Reynolds, Vice President, Regional Marketing Operations. Richard wants to meet with you at 9. Barbara explained. And then we'll have the executive team gathering at 10 to officially welcome you. The company-wide announcement goes out at 11. I nodded, setting my things on the impressive desk, and the video conference with the regional offices Scheduled for 2 this afternoon, Barbara confirmed. We thought it would be best to give people a few hours to process the announcement before you address them directly. The morning proceeded according to plan. Richard Montgomery welcomed me warmly to the executive team. Your insight into the regional operations will be invaluable, he told me, especially as we work to address some of the cultural issues you've experienced firsthand. The executive team meeting was a refreshing contrast to what I'd grown accustomed to in Atlanta. Ideas were discussed thoughtfully, credit was given explicitly, and disagreements were professional rather than personal. For the first time in years, I felt fully seen and heard in a meeting. At precisely 11, the company-wide email went out. From Richard Montgomery, CEO, to all Meridian Technologies employees subject executive leadership announcement. Dear Meridian team, I am pleased to announce an important addition to our executive leadership team. Effective immediately, Anita Reynolds has been promoted to Vice President of Regional Marketing Operations. In this role, Anita will oversee all regional marketing departments, standardize best practices, and lead our efforts to create more collaborative, effective marketing strategies company-wide. She brings 7 years of exemplary experience from our Atlanta office, where she has consistently delivered outstanding results for our clients. Anita will be based in Chicago, but will work directly with all regional offices, beginning with a comprehensive review of current operations and team structures. Please join me in congratulating Anita on this well-deserved promotion. Richard Montgomery, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Technologies. Within minutes, my phone began buzzing incessantly with notifications. I ignored it for now, focusing instead on preparing for the afternoon video conference. Barbara and I reviewed the talking points, emphasizing that my approach would focus on improvement rather than punishment, though accountability would certainly be part of the equation. At lunch, I finally checked my phone. There were 17 text messages, 23 emails, and several LinkedIn notifications from colleagues suddenly eager to connect. The messages from Atlanta were particularly interesting. From Rachel Anita. Just saw the announcement. Congratulations, I always knew you were destined for great things. We must catch up soon. So proud to have worked alongside you all these years. From Marcus. Congratulations on the promotion, Anita. Your contributions to the Atlanta office were always valued. Looking forward to continuing our productive professional relationship. From Heather. Oh my God, VP. So amazing and well-deserved. That farewell party was just us having fun. You know how we joke around here. Can't wait to work with you in your new capacity. Each message was more transparent than the last attempts to rewrite history in real time. The only genuine message was from James. From James, congratulations, Anita. They have no idea how lucky they are to have you in leadership. Well-deserved and long overdue. I responded only to James, thanking him for his support and mentioning that I looked forward to our video conference that afternoon. At 2 o'clock, I sat in the executive conference room, Barbara beside me for support, as the large screen filled with video feeds from each regional office. Atlanta was prominently displayed, the entire team gathered in the same conference room where my farewell party had taken place just 17 days earlier. I could see their faces clearly. Rachel looking tense despite her forced smile. Marcus attempting to appear confident but failing. Heather fidgeting nervously and James sitting quietly with the hint of a satisfied smile. Good afternoon, everyone. I began, my voice steady and professional. As you've likely seen from the announcement, I've joined the executive team as Vice President of Regional Marketing Operations. In this role, I'll be overseeing all regional marketing activities, including those in the Atlanta office. The Atlanta feed showed several people shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Rachel's smile had become frozen, a rictus of panic. Over the coming weeks, I'll be conducting a comprehensive review of our regional operations team structures and client relationships. My goal is to identify best practices, address any cultural or procedural issues, and ensure we're providing the best possible service to our clients. Marcus cleared his throat. Anita, congratulations on the promotion. Had we known about this opportunity during your time here, we would have celebrated very differently. His attempt at humor fell flat, as several colleagues winced visibly. Yes, I replied evenly. I imagine the farewell party would have taken a different tone. A heavy silence fell over the Atlanta room. Rachel attempted recovery. We're so excited to work with you in this new capacity, Anita. That party was just our silly office humor. We've always valued your contributions tremendously. I appreciate that perspective, Rachel, I said, maintaining my professional tone. I believe actions and patterns over time speak louder than any single event or current statement. I'll be scheduling individual meetings with each of you over the next few weeks to discuss your roles, contributions, and perspectives on how we can improve our regional operations. Heather raised her hand tentatively. Will you be visiting Atlanta in person soon? Yes, I confirmed. I'll be conducting on-site reviews of all regional offices beginning with Atlanta next week. I've already reserved the main conference room for 3 days of meetings. The same room where they had humiliated me. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. In preparation for those meetings, I continued. I'd like each team member to prepare a portfolio of their contributions over the past year, including metrics, client feedback, and collaborative efforts. Documentation will be essential as we move forward. Several panicked glances were exchanged. Documentation had never been their strong suit, especially when it came to taking credit for others' work. I look forward to working with all of you to create a more collaborative, transparent, and effective marketing operation, I concluded. My calendar invites for individual meetings will be sent out today. Thank you for your time. As the video conference ended, Barbara turned to me with an impressed expression. That was masterfully handled. Professional, but clear. Thank you, I replied. I think the message was received. Indeed, within hours, my inbox filled with frantic emails from Atlanta colleagues, suddenly eager to highlight their contributions, explain misunderstandings, and reframe past interactions. Marcus sent a particularly desperate message, attempting to explain that the presentation at my farewell party had been meant as light-hearted roasting a tradition for valued team members. I responded to all messages with the same professional tone, neither acknowledging nor dismissing their attempts to rewrite history. Instead, I focused on concrete next steps, documentation requirements, and scheduling. That evening, in my new Chicago apartment, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. The vindication I felt was not about punishment or revenge, but about the opportunity to transform a toxic culture and create the kind of workplace I had always wanted to be part of. The faces of my former colleagues, when they realized I was now their boss, would stay with me not as a source of satisfaction but as a reminder of how quickly perception and treatment can change, based on title alone. My phone buzzed with a text from James. The office has never been so quiet. Looking forward to your visit next week. I smiled. At least one relationship from Atlanta was worth preserving. The following Monday, I walked through the doors of Meridian's Atlanta office for the first time since my departure. The receptionist did a double take, then quickly stood. Vice President Reynolds, welcome back. Can I get you anything, coffee, water? Just coffee, thank you, I replied, noting how different her greeting was from the barely acknowledged nods I'd received for years. Marcus was waiting outside the main conference room, hand-extended smile firmly in place. Anita, welcome back. We've prepared everything for your meetings today. Thank you, Marcus, I said, shaking his hand briefly. I'll need 30 minutes to set up before our first meeting. Of course, whatever you need. He hovered awkwardly, clearly wanting to say more but unsure how to navigate our new dynamic. I'd spent the weekend finalizing my approach to these meetings. After much reflection, I had decided that my leadership philosophy would focus on 3 principles: accountability, transparency, and recognition. I wouldn't seek revenge for past treatment, but I wouldn't pretend it hadn't happened either. The conference room had been meticulously prepared. Gone were the mockery and sarcasm from the farewell party, replaced with professional presentation materials and a fruit basket with a welcome card signed by the entire team. The transformation was almost comical in its completeness. I set up my laptop and reviewed my notes for the first meeting scheduled with Marcus. At precisely 9:30, he knocked and entered portfolio and hand expression carefully composed. Thank you for meeting with me, Anita, he began, taking a seat across from me. First, I want to say congratulations again on your promotion. It's well deserved. Thank you, I replied. I'd like to start by discussing your understanding of your role as department head, and then review your personal contributions separate from team achievements. What followed was a fascinating exercise in backpedaling. Marcus struggled to identify specific contributions he had made personally, as opposed to work he had claimed credit for. When pressed for metrics and documentation, he became increasingly uncomfortable. "I've always seen my role as more about direction and oversight," he explained, avoiding eye contact. "Leadership is certainly about direction," I agreed, "but it's also about accountability and giving appropriate credit. Looking at the Nexus Solutions account, for example, I note that you presented my strategy as your own, without attribution." His face flushed. There may have been some miscommunication about that particular presentation. "Perhaps," I said evenly. "Going forward, all team members will receive explicit credit for their contributions. This includes in client presentations, internal reports, and performance reviews. I'll be implementing a new documentation system to ensure this happens consistently." By the end of our meeting, Marcus understood that while his job wasn't in immediate jeopardy, his approach to leadership would need to change dramatically. He left looking shaken but determined to adapt. Rachel arrived for her meeting with a carefully crafted persona of enthusiastic support. "I've always admired your work ethic, Anita," she began, before I had even asked a question. "Rachel, I interrupted gently. "This meeting will be more productive if we focus on facts rather than reinterpreting our professional history." Her smile faltered. "Of course, I just wanted to express my support." "I appreciate that. Let's discuss the office culture you've helped create and how it might evolve going forward." The conversation that followed was direct but not unkind. I outlined specific instances where her gossip and undermining had damaged team cohesion and effectiveness. Rather than denying them, she eventually took a different approach. "I was just playing the game the way it's always been played here," she said defensively. Marcus rewarded that behavior. "That's a fair observation," I acknowledged, "and it highlights why cultural change is necessary. The game, as you call it, has resulted in a toxic environment that undermines our collective success." By the end of our conversation, Rachel understood that her social influence could be redirected toward positive team building rather than division. Whether she would choose that path remained to be seen, but the expectations were clear. Heather's meeting was perhaps the most uncomfortable. Her dual nature, friendly and direct interaction but undermining behind the scenes, had been particularly insidious. "Integrity will be a core value in our restructured team," I told her. "Alignment between what we say directly to colleagues and what we say about them to others." She twisted her hands nervously. "I've always tried to support everyone." "Support looks like honesty, reliability, and consistency," I replied. "When you told me you were looking out for me while reporting concerns to Marcus without context, that wasn't supportive." Tears formed in her eyes. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I just wanted to fit in." "I understand that motivation," I said more gently. "And now you have an opportunity to help create an environment where fitting in means upholding positive values rather than participating in negative behaviors." My meeting with James was refreshingly straightforward. His documentation was meticulous, his contributions clear, and his integrity evident. "I want to thank you for being a positive presence in a difficult environment," I told him sincerely. He nodded. "It wasn't always easy. I considered leaving many times." "I'd like you to consider a new role," I said. "Assistant department head with a focus on mentoring junior team members and helping implement our new collaborative processes." His surprise and gratitude were evident. I'd be honored to take on that responsibility. The remaining team meetings followed similar patterns. Some colleagues were defensive, others apologetic, a few genuinely reflective about their contributions to the office culture. I maintained the same approach with each professional fair, focused on future improvement rather than past grievances. By the end of my 3-day visit, I had outlined several structural changes. First, a new recognition system that ensured proper attribution for ideas and contributions. Every presentation would clearly indicate who had developed each component, and client relationships would be documented to reflect all team members involved. Second, an anonymous feedback system that would allow team members to raise concerns about behavior or process without fear of retaliation. This would be reviewed regularly by both local leadership and my office in Chicago. Third, a revised promotion and compensation structure that rewarded collaboration as highly as individual achievement. Team success metrics would factor significantly into personal performance reviews. Fourth, regular team-building activities focused on genuine connection rather than forced socialization. These would include professional development opportunities and collaborative projects. On my final day, I called an all-hands meeting to share these changes with the entire team. The same conference room that had hosted my humiliating farewell party now held a group of attentive, somewhat anxious colleagues. The changes I've outlined today represent a significant shift in how this office will operate moving forward, I concluded. I understand that adaptation takes time and effort. Not everyone will be comfortable with this new approach, and that's okay. What matters is a good faith effort to contribute to a healthier, more productive environment. Marcus raised his hand. How will you be monitoring our progress from Chicago? I'll be visiting monthly. For the first quarter, I explained. James will provide weekly updates as assistant department head, and I'll be conducting regular one-on-one check-ins virtually. Transparency works both ways, so you'll also receive regular updates from me about corporate initiatives and decisions that affect your work. As the meeting ended, I noticed a mix of reactions. Some colleagues seemed genuinely relieved and energized by the prospect of a healthier workplace. Others appeared uncertain, perhaps wondering if they could adapt to new expectations. A few, including Rachel, seemed to be calculating how to navigate the new landscape to their advantage. I had no illusions that cultural transformation would happen overnight. Years of entrenched behavior wouldn't change in 3 days of meetings, but I had laid the groundwork for something better, something I wished had existed when I first joined the company. That evening, James walked me to my car. People are talking, he said. Most are shocked by how fair you're being given how they treated you. And revenge wouldn't improve anything, I replied. And honestly, it would just perpetuate the toxic culture. What matters is creating something better going forward. Still, it must feel good to see their faces when they realized who you've become. I smiled. I won't deny there was a certain satisfaction in that moment. But the real satisfaction will come from seeing this office transform into a place where talent is recognized, collaboration is valued, and people can thrive regardless of who they know or how well they play politics. As I drove away from the Atlanta office, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me to this point. The farewell party that had been meant as a final humiliation had instead become the launching point for meaningful change. Sometimes the worst experiences lead to the best opportunities, not just for personal growth, but for creating the change you wish to see. 1 year after the Goodbye Forever party, I stood in the doorway of the Atlanta office, observing the transformed environment before me. The physical space looked largely the same: glass partitions and modern furniture, but the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Teams gathered around shared projects, voices engaged in constructive discussion rather than whispered gossip. The energy felt collaborative and purposeful, a stark contrast to the competitive tension that had once defined this space. Not everyone had weathered the transition. Rachel had left 3 months after my promotion, unwilling or unable to adapt to the new expectations. Her departure email cited pursuing other opportunities, but James later told me she had struggled with the transparent attribution system that prevented her from claiming others' work as her own. Marcus had surprised me. After initial resistance, he had embraced the new approach with unexpected enthusiasm. I was trained in the old way of doing things, he admitted during our 6-month review. It never occurred to me there could be another way to lead. He now headed a mentor program for new hires, emphasizing collaboration over competition. Heather had found her genuine voice, no longer playing both sides of every interaction. She still organized office events, but they had become authentic celebrations, rather than opportunities for mockery or exclusion. James had thrived as assistant department head, his natural integrity and quiet competence earning him respect throughout the company. He had recently been promoted to department head of a new digital marketing division, a role that played to his strengths and innovative thinking. New team members had joined, bringing fresh perspectives and talent, unencumbered by the old office politics. The blend of experienced staff and new hires had created a dynamic environment where both institutional knowledge and fresh ideas were valued. Client satisfaction metrics had increased by 27%. Employee retention had improved significantly. and perhaps most tellingly, internal surveys showed a dramatic shift in how team members perceived their workplace, with collaborative, supportive, and innovative replacing competitive, political, and stressful as the most common descriptors. As I conducted my monthly review meetings that day, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here and the lessons I had learned along the way. First, I had learned about resilience and the power of quiet excellence. For years, I had worked diligently despite lack of recognition, documenting my contributions and building relationships with clients who valued my work. That foundation had eventually been recognized by those who mattered, even as my immediate colleagues dismissed my efforts. Second, I had gained insight into human nature and workplace dynamics. The same people who had celebrated my departure with cruel jokes had pivoted instantly to support when they discovered my new position. Their behavior revealed more about their insecurities and the toxic system they operated within than about my actual value or contributions. Third, I had discovered the importance of responding to cruelty with professionalism. By maintaining composure during the farewell party and approaching my new leadership role with fairness rather than vengeance, I had set the tone for the transformation that followed. Responding to toxicity with more toxicity would have perpetuated the very culture I hoped to change. Fourth, I had learned to balance forgiveness with accountability. Some behaviors required addressing directly, particularly when they had damaged team effectiveness or individual well-being. Other missteps could be forgiven as products of a flawed system rather than personal malice. Distinguishing between these cases had been crucial in rebuilding the team. Fifth, and perhaps most importantly, I had discovered that our worst experiences often contain the seeds of our greatest growth. The challenges I faced in the Atlanta office had prepared me for leadership in ways that a more supportive environment might not have. I understood firsthand the damage that toxic cultures cause, giving me both the insight and motivation to create something better. That evening, we held a small celebration for the 1-year anniversary of the new team structure. Unlike the forced, uncomfortable gatherings of the past, this was a genuine acknowledgement of collective achievement. Team members shared stories of challenging projects overcome together, clients won through collaborative effort and personal growth, facilitated by mutual support. As I raised a glass to toast their accomplishments, I caught James's eye across the room. He smiled and gave me a subtle nod, acknowledging how far we had come from that painful goodbye forever party just 1 year ago. To the Atlanta team, I said, and to the power of transformation. What we've built here proves that workplace culture isn't fixed or inevitable. It's created daily, through our choices, actions, and how we treat one another. Thank you for choosing to create something exceptional. Later, as the gathering wound down, a newer team member approached me. I've heard stories about how things used to be here, she said. It's hard to imagine given how supportive everyone is now. Cultural change is possible, I told her, but it requires both leadership commitment and individual willingness to adapt. The credit belongs to everyone who embraced a different way of working together. On my flight back to Chicago that night, I thought about the strange, painful, ultimately transformative journey of the past year. The colleagues who had thrown me a goodbye forever party had inadvertently launched me into a position where I could create the workplace I had always wanted to be part of. Their mockery had become the catalyst for meaningful change, not just for me, but for an entire office of professionals. Sometimes the most painful experiences contain unexpected gifts. My farewell had actually been a beginning, both for my leadership journey and for the transformation of a toxic culture into something healthier and more productive. The colleagues who thought they were saying good riddance had no idea they were actually witnessing the start of something remarkable. I still keep that cheap snow globe from the farewell party on my desk in Chicago. It serves as a reminder that our lowest moments sometimes precede our greatest opportunities, and that the way people treat you often says more about them than about you. Most importantly, it reminds me that with persistence, integrity, and the courage to remain true to yourself, even the most toxic situations can become platforms for positive change. Have you ever been underestimated at work only to prove everyone wrong? Or have you witnessed a toxic workplace transform into something better? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that sometimes our biggest challenges lead to our greatest opportunities. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your worth isn't determined by others' perception of you, but by the integrity and value you bring to everything you do.